Director Barnes go through almost every state agency related to either human services or law enforcement will be related in this, as will the private sector and nonprofit sector. This young lady and I have been involved in passing legislation related to domestic violence prevention and interpersonal violence for longer than I can remember, perhaps 15 or 20 years. Sandy Middleton has been in the halls of the House of Representatives and Senate, and Sandy has been someone who has served those that have needed the help after domestic violence, after violence that has occurred from an interpersonal relationship, and now violence that is occurring because of human trafficking. So I'd like for Sandy to come forward now, the Director of the Center for Violence Prevention. Sandy, thank you so much for everything you've always done.
And I just want to start by thanking you, Governor Bryant, for your dedication on this issue, and not only on this issue of human trafficking, but all the other issues that affect victims of crime. You know, when we look at crime from the eyes of a victim, it gives us the perspective that we need to do the right thing as far as criminals are concerned. And thank you also to General Hood for your long-time service and commitment to this issue. And we look forward to the good things that we're going to be able to do through this task force. And I just kind of want to echo some of the things that have already been said about human trafficking. You know, these traffickers use violence, threats, lies, coercion, and all sorts of tactics to force people to work or sell sex against their will. Rusty mentioned that it's the second largest crime in the country, and that's the case because organized crime and gangs have figured out that they can make more money selling people than they can selling drugs and arms, because why? I used to be a school teacher. Anybody got that answer?
Reusable commodity, resellable.
That's right. Human beings are non-consumable, so they can sell them over and over and over again, whereas drugs and guns have to be replaced. And so, you know, that almost makes you have a knee-jerk reaction to how horrific this crime is and what we're actually talking about. Human trafficking is here now in Mississippi, and it's not just here in the metro area. It's all over our state. And I'm going to talk about a few instances that we've seen. You mentioned shared hope, and I too am anxious to see the numbers and the data. We cooperated at the Center for Violence Prevention with this study, and I'm anxious to see all the information after it's compiled, because that will be the first real numbers that we have from the state of Mississippi. The Polaris Project, which is also a national human trafficking agency, reported 162 calls from their hotline for Mississippi in 2013. Their annual report also identified 22 suspected victims of sex trafficking and 7 victims of suspected labor trafficking in Mississippi. Since 2013, my agency, the Center for Violence Prevention, has served 19 victims of human trafficking. And as you know, we're bound by confidentiality, but I do just want to give some generalities of some of those cases. In some of those examples, mothers were sold by daughters, girls were sold by family members for drugs or rent. We had one case in particular where a woman was bought by a truck driver in a several states away for $4,000 and was able to escape at a truck stop when they came through Jackson, and we were able to get her at that point. There have been multiple cases of forced prostitution, and most of the cases that we have seen have been women in their early 20s who were groomed into prostitution as young girls. The target age to start to groom these victims of human trafficking for little boys is between the age of 11 and 13, and for little girls is between the ages of 12 and 14. And, you know, don't think it just affects our little girls, because I'm sorry to tell you that's just not the case. These victims are so traumatized by what they've seen and what's happened to them and what they've been forced to do, that it can take years for them to recover. The services that are provided to these victims it's so important that they're appropriate and that they're trauma-based services. I know there are a lot of people that are kind of popping up around the state who are saying, you know, we'll serve victims of human trafficking, but part of what this task force I hope will do is set some standards for those agencies and make sure that when law enforcement has a victim of human trafficking, that they know that they're turning them over to an agency who is competent and able to provide the services that they need in order to recover from this horrific experience. So, and the trauma-informed services are some of the most important things that we can do for these victims. Our efforts at the center include trauma therapy, case management, advocacy, any type of immediate needs they have, such as, obviously, when law enforcement takes them out of that trafficking situation, they're what? Homeless, jobless. Most of the time, they don't have a family. They have nothing. And so you have to take that individual and absolutely start over. And the ones that we've had to come in literally have come off the street. So, I mean, we immediately have to put clothes on, you know, and then even getting a birth certificate in some of these cases, because as you know, you can't do anything now without a birth certificate. And being able to find some of their vital records, some of these that have been with these traffickers for so many years, they don't even know. I mean, they've been so many people and they've been arrested in so many states for prostitution that it's difficult to even find their vital records or be able to access them. So there are all sorts of problems that we run into when we start to advocate for these victims. So we'll be able to address these problems. And again, this task force will be the vehicle through which our state will develop a cohesive and collaborative approach in this fight against modern-day slavery. One thing is certain, and all the research that I've seen, public awareness is key. People have to be aware of this issue. Now, we don't want to encourage everyday people to go out and try to rescue these victims, and you know, we have seen some of this happen, and it scares me to death. These are bad guys. These people are bad people, and you know, I'm not going to be involved in, you know, being on the streets trying to rescue these victims. That's why we've got all these wonderful men and women with guns and badges. So, I mean, let's let them do their jobs and go do the arresting and taking care of removing the victims. And at that point, service providers can step in and do what we do. But public awareness is important because people need to know what to look for. And that's part of the reason why the Polaris Project hotline has been important for us to get this data from, because people will call and say, hey, I see so-and-so. So-and-so is at my nail salon and I think they sleep there. Or, you know, just different types of information that law enforcement can gather and actually start to make a case from. So all of this information is important that we can get from the public. Media, you guys can assist in helping to educate the public. You can publicize the successful prosecutions, which, thank goodness, DAS has just had one, and we certainly appreciate that. Partnerships with law enforcement and service providers will result in victim recovery and successful prosecution of offenders. And that's what we want. We want the victims to be able to recover, and we want the bad guys to go to jail for a long time. And then we want to sell all their stuff and take all their money. That's what we want to do, right?
Then punish them.
That's right, and then punish them after we get all their stuff. Protocols need to be developed, and I'm hopeful that that's one of the things that we'll be able to do on the task force. All involved agencies need to know what to do. They need to not only know what to look for, but they need to know what to do. I got a call from MDOT. I don't guess it's Willie Huff here. I don't know. But I got a call from MDOT, and actually they had a situation where they really wanted to do something in a case, but they weren't real sure about, you know, where the laws were and you know, what the protocol was. And so it will allow us to examine all of those issues and give answers to all of our law enforcement who are out there. And then finally, training will lay the groundwork for law enforcement and our court personnel, our prosecution, to be able to do their jobs as well also. So thank you again to Governor Bryant, and look forward to working with the task force. I want to get started, and thank you again to General Hood.
Thank you.